You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Once again, and thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way, the premier podcast exclusively about pro wrestling in New England. My name is Matt Spectro, a.k.a. Tarzan Taylor, and I'm going to introduce my host. He is a former NWA On Fire heavyweight champion, and he is the Tom Brady of poker house games, Julian Starr.
You can tell that you're reaching for other championships that I've held. You're going to run out of titles soon, pal.
I think I've already repeated.
I didn't hold much in my wrestling career. I was more of a guy that helped other people get over.
All right. We're back once again for episode 7. It's a pleasure to see you as always.
Not so much for me.
Right here in the...
I see you all week, so, I'm glad to get away from you and your banter.
Yeah, you
seem nice here, but... Come outside this microphone. You're quite an angry guy.
Well, only once do you see me in the Pro Wrestling Way studios, which we are now.
Is that where we're at?
Exactly.
I didn't know this was a studio.
Yeah, something's been bugging me I wanted to ask you about.
Oh, boy. I can only imagine.
There's probably no answer to this, but, we talk a lot about honesty, and part of truth is part of our podcast.
Yeah.
It's even in the name, Truth, Justice. People lie all the time. I mean, it's human nature. I lie. You lie, teachers lie, the boss lie.
I'm a very truthful guy.
How truthful do you think the guests are being when we have them on the show?
It's weird because there's parts where I genuinely feel like they're being 100% truthful, and then there's other parts that I'm like, you can almost hear it in their voice that, it's like there's like a political sense of how they're going to answer because they don't necessarily want to rub someone the wrong way, which I don't really get. I mean, everyone has their opinion. And everyone's entitled to their opinion, so just let it be. Honestly, it's 50-50 for me.
I wonder if there's a correlation to how far away from the business you are related to how truthful you are.
I actually believe that is a very deep correlation. I think the further you away from the business that you are, the more truthful you become, because then there's nothing holding you back. There's nothing that you have to politic for, no spots that you want or need or whatever the case may be. So I genuinely think that you don't have anything to gain. You only have everything to lose.
All right. On that note, other than our podcast being exclusively about pro wrestling in New England, tell the people what the theme of our cast is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can all agree that most wrestling podcasts tend to be a bit too friendly. We can also agree that most people are going to avoid trying to be brutally honest in the event that confrontation may occur. But I can assure you this podcast is going to break that mold. And the term good brother will not fall into the vocabulary of this podcast, as we're going to ask those hard-hitting questions that you've always wanted to know. And we're going to continue to probe to gain the reality. There's not going to be any tiptoeing with us because we plan to address every aspect of New England pro wrestling, no matter how uncomfortable it may become. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a got you moment, nor are we going to put them on the spot. We're not here to embarrass. We are simply here to deliver truth and justice in the New England pro wrestling way.
All right. So we're going to do another, what we've kind of dubbed the man behind the curtain episode of Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
You want to say that correctly?
I can't say the name of my own podcast.
I just want to say I came up with this name on my own. I pitched it to you one day, and you thought it was a brilliant idea.
Will you stop? All right, where we speak to an owner of a New England-based pro wrestling company, and we go over all the ins and outs of that wrestling company. Sometimes even give them a little free publicity, depending on if they're running still. Because we do the past, present, and future of New England pro wrestling.
Oh, was that a segue for me? I was just waiting for you to continue.
All right.
You ramble on like a weird perverted guy into the mic. You're like,
having said all that, I am going to introduce our guest. He is a Atlantic Pro Wrestling heavyweight champion, an Atlantic New England champion, Atlantic Pro Wrestling New England champion. an Atlantic Pro Wrestling Tag Team Champion, a Liberty States No Limit Champion, a Liberty States Tag Team Champion, and a Liberty States Heavyweight Champion. And he is the owner and proprietor of Liberty States Pro Wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, the Unequaled One, Todd Sople.
Wow, I feel so prim and proper now. What an introduction.
I wish I could have done it a little better. Stumbled a little bit there. All right, today we're going to talk about your wrestling company, Liberty States Pro Wrestling. I want to thank you for joining us on the show.
Oh,
Julian,
my pleasure.
You've wrestled for...
Former Liberty States Heavyweight Champion, Julian Starr.
I have. As a matter of fact, I wrestled for the earlier company, No Limit Pro Wrestling. Which
yes, we'll get into that.
I actually wrestled for that, and then later on, as I had gotten trained and gotten, a little more experienced, Todd was running a show and, asked me if I'd work. Actually, I think I actually asked him, and I tell you, those shows were a lot of fun. They were a different kind of show, but I thought it was a good time. It's a really good time, actually.
All right, and normally we start with the softball question. I'm going to ask you, have you ever been on a podcast before?
No, this is actually my first podcast.
Ever?
All right.
Wow, it's another first here in the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
Like I was telling you before we started rolling, like I thought I was going to be on Malonis' podcast, Malonis and Crockett's podcast, because we were doing the whole like Astromania thing, me and Brian.
The WPAN, ladies and gentlemen.
The WPAN, cheap plug. And but yeah, that never worked out for some reason or the other and everything. But hey,
Malonis could tell you exactly what it didn't work out.
I'm sure he could.
Yeah, cool. We swooped the guests right from them, didn't we?
They helped us get off the ground, and then we just take the guests away.
So before we get into the company itself, just give the listeners who are unfamiliar with you a little bit of your background.
So originally, I got trained or started to be a pro wrestler, or started the journey of being a pro wrestler when I was about 19, 20 years old, right out of high school. I knew if I went right out of high school into college, I would probably leave because my heart wasn't in it. So I went and got trained at Steve Bradley's pro wrestling school in Manchester. I was there for about 8 months or so, mostly being trained by Al, but Steve, obviously would come in from time to time. And eventually, for whatever reason, I can't even remember really why, I kind of lost the passion for it, or maybe I was just stupid and immature and, wasn't progressing, and, like a lot of people, I'm not progressing the way I want to be. I'm not, a main eventer within 8 months or something like that. So I just left. And, long story short, I got into like a couple bands and everything because I also play guitar. And, I kind of got out of wrestling for, 3 or 4 years. And eventually I got back into it in a weird roundabout way with this group in Manchester, this sort of like semi-backyard group called WAW, who would, run these shows in like a mill building in Manchester. And I would say shows, they're on public access, but like none of these kids were what I would call trained, and I was like the most trained out of all of them. So like, at that time I was, doing that in the mill building. They eventually moved to like a bigger gym in Manchester. I think they're still doing it and still not trained, but that's neither here nor there. But through that, I met a couple people. I met this guy, Brian Reese, who ran Collision Pro Wrestling out of, I think it was Drake at Mass, where he lived. And, he would run these shows. He would bring in, guys from like all over the country. Like he would bring in like, Bobby Fish. This was before he was Bobby Fish. I think his name was like Jerk Jackson or something like that. He would bring in like, local guys like Slick and, Tony Thomas, guys like that. And he would run these shows and, it wasn't really doing too well and everything, but I got hooked up with him, and he was running a Good Time Emporium in Somerville, Massachusetts, where I think Sheldon ran a couple times or, whatnot. I know a lot of people used to run there. And he basically, one way or the other, sort of like, got me along as sort of be like, for lack of a better term, a money mark. Mm-hmm. In the clearest sense of it. So I would provide all like the upfront funds and everything like that. And we would run it, Good Time Emporium. And at this time, I had absolutely no idea what the hell I was doing, and quite frankly, Brian didn't either, because we basically, we'd go out and, hang up posters and promote and everything like that, or promote with quotation marks. But, we would still like draw 50, 60 people at most sometimes. And, eventually after, we stopped running Good Times, we went to Woburn in the Elks, which is where Chaotic runs now. And we would draw even less there, like 30 or 40 people. I think the most we ever drew there was 80 for our uncensored show, which was one of the most ridiculously comical and low points of my promoting career. It was an uncensored show where basically, anything went. We had our ring announcer Adam come out and say, "Welcome to No Limit fucking pro wrestling," or something like that. It was ridiculous.
It's funny. I actually remember that show because
you were probably on that show.
I might have been. I think I worked like I don't remember his name.
You probably worked
Johnny
somebody
Cromwell.
really Yes, he was actually good.
Yeah, he actually had a lot of potential. I wish he had stuck with it, but
he's a lawyer now, actually.
Yes, he is making tons of money.
No
he's
kidding.
He's a smart guy.
Very, very smart guy.
What a world.
But I remember that because the Burning Hammer was prevalent at that time, and that's where everyone read about everything.
Yeah.
And I remember, because I knew nothing about wrestling, I saw Uncensored Show, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't imagine what's going to happen at this show." Like, I was genuinely, "Oh my god, this show is going to be." You know what? Now that I remember, I wasn't booked for that show because I wanted to be on that show, strictly because it was quote unquote uncensored, and I was not properly trained at that point. But so I guess that's a good segue. So, what kind of got you in the mindset? So, like you said, you went and trained to be a professional wrestler with Steve and that whole deal. And then down the road, at what point made you say, "I want to be a wrestling owner, promoter, booker," in that sense? Like, what hit you in the head and said, "I want to do this," and not so much just the wrestling?
Well, it was kind of a combination of things. At this time, I had still I was basically coasting off of all the training I got way, way back, when I first started training. And this was 5 years or something, whatever it was down the line. And, I wasn't getting any better, in ring and everything. And, eventually it was a combination of things. I eventually got hooked up with Bob Evans, sort of took me under his wing, for lack of a better term. And, I started, driving 2 hours, to Rhode Island and, training down there, getting better, getting on more shows. So that was part of it. The other part of it was, Brian, sort of, grew tired of the whole promoting thing and everything. So he was like, "Oh man, I'm running into some, financial difficulty and everything. I'm looking to sell the ring." And of course I stepped up, because I wanted to keep running the show. So I was like, "Oh, so about how much are you looking to sell that for?" And, he gave me actually a really good price on a high spots ring. High spots rings are what, $5,000, something like that.
Yeah.
I got it for $2,000.
Wow, that's not bad.
Yeah. And it's more than paid for itself. So luckily, so I bought the ring. And I basically lucked into a building in Peabody, Massachusetts. Through a guy named Atlee Green. Used to run North Shore Pro Wrestling or North Shore Wrestling out of. He ran I would say 6 or 8 shows at the McCarthy Elementary in Peabody. He would have guys like Bob and Tony O'Thomas and other guys like that. Good, clean, family friendly shows. And eventually, I guess he just either got tired of doing it and everything and just, stopped running or couldn't do it and everything. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, would you mind if I, took over the school and ran?" And he was fine with it. And I've been there and running shows for about 10 years now.
Okay, now were you running No Limit Pro Wrestling at that time at Peabody, or were you still doing Woburn?
So No Limit Pro Wrestling basically died when I left Woburn.
Okay, so was it when Chaotic kind of took over Woburn, or did you just leave Woburn on your own?
I just left Woburn. I just stopped running Woburn because
what about 2006?
God, let me think. It was 2008.
Okay, so it went a little longer. So you kind of got into that spin and just said, "I kind of want to," you kind of fell into being a promoter, and so okay, and then you kind of ran with it, bought a ring, all that stuff. Do you feel that No Limit Pro Wrestling as itself was successful?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm being completely honest.
Okay.
If it was successful, it would still be No Limit Pro Wrestling.
It's true.
And if it was successful, I would still, be running places. Well, not Good Time Emporium because I'm not there anymore. But I'd still be running places like the Woburn Elks and everything.
Yeah.
It needed it needed a rebrand. It needed just like a fresh start. It needed new wrestlers, and a lot of that was being hooked up with, Bob and everything. I would be hooked up with these people who actually knew what they were doing. Because a lot of Brian's thing in wrestling was like booking like these like no name people like that would, lack of a better term, it's nothing new, kiss his ass.
Yep.
And, they would be training God knows where. And, they would be on these shows and they would be friggin' terrible, and No Limit Pro Wrestling was not successful by any means. And then when we went to, it wasn't like a conscious decision to like rename it. I think it just like sort of fell into it because when we originally went to the McCarthy Elementary, I got hooked up. I think it was through Joey Eastman with the NWA, and it was NWA Liberty States Wrestling.
Yeah. So before I transition into that, because I know I'm gonna not make this the Julian Star Todd Sople show. Negate.
It's the Julian Star Todd Sople show, everybody.
Yeah. So before I go ahead and do that, I have one little question I want to ask. I know that you had a little spout with No Limit Pro Wrestling and some tag belts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I heard rumblings, but I don't know the actual story. So
the Cliff Notes version of the story basically is like it was something along the lines of, this is when Brian was still in the running it with me, for lack of a better term. And it was our tag champions were the Hoods, Davey Cash and Chris Pyro.
Yeah.
And they got ticked off with money or something they didn't think they were being paid properly or something like that. I can't even remember what we were paying them. And they just decided to abscond with the tag belts and not give them back.
So they lived their gimmick for real.
Yes. So not only did they not give them back to me, they're my property and they just decided not to give them back. They defended them on another show and threw them in the trash.
Oh.
So, and I heard all about this secondhand and everything, and I'm still hearing about it today. I think, I think it was Scott Levesque or something like that used to run down there or used to wrestle down there and everything. He's like, "Oh, Sople probably thinks I put those belts in the trash, with them, whenever I had something to do with it. That's why he won't book me." Blah blah blah. I was like, "Hey, I had no fucking clue who had anything to do with what." The heat was all on Davey Cash and Chris Pyro. And still is, because I remember, so I got the belts back, long story short. I think it was Matt Storm and Kyle Storm through Bob, who basically, they were working for them in PWF or whatever that company was. And basically, they said, "Hey, look, stop screwing around, give him his freaking belts back." And I got the belts back and everything. And so, but, I remember... a year or so after that, at a Chikara show or anything, we were in some crazy 10-man cluster, whatever the fuck it was, and the Hoods were on the other side, and Steve Weiner put this whole thing together, not knowing anybody and not knowing who hated who or anything like that, and Davey Cash walks up to me, he's like, "Hey man, we're cool, blah blah blah, right?" and everything. So I shook his hand and everything, but deep down inside, and I probably would have said it now. I was like, "No, we're not fucking cool. You took my property and didn't give it back. I had to jump through hoops to get it back." But so that's basically where the heat stems from to this day. That's the whole story.
Interesting.
So I hope if Jamie's listening, Todd had $2,000. He bought a ring. You bought a bell, a name, a stretcher, and a notebook full of quote-unquote contacts. Just saying. All right, so we believe our research is a little spotty here, but
okay, yeah.
2006 was that the first Liberty State show?
The first Liberty State show was 2008. Might have been 2008, 2000. I know it was in January, so I think it was 2008.
You remember the very first show?
Yep, I remember the main event on the first show was me and Matt Taven for, I think it was our No Limits title.
Ring of Honor superstar.
Ring of Honor world champion at the time. This is, Lord knows he could lose it, but I don't want to jinx him. But yeah, that was our first main event for our No Limits title, I think. And I think the other match was for the NWA Liberty Stage title. It was Bob and Antonio Thomas, I think.
Well, is that a question? Or
That's what I recall,
We do look, what our research, Antonio seems to be one of your first champions, but I don't know how accurate this information is. So
I think he was the first NWA Liberty Stage champion. And like I think we ran with the NWA Liberty States name for about a year.
I remember that vividly because I was like, wow, how did Todd get the NWA name? Like,
pay for it, basically.
I mean, I've as you know, Julian, I've been a booker myself.
no way.
I don't know if I've mentioned that
Surely
on
you jest.
any other episodes. Shows can be kind of a clusterfuck. So
Yeah, you got
you
that
had
right.
some experience. So was the first show smooth sailing? Would you say?
From what I recall, yes. Like when we started doing the McCarthy, I think that really changed everything because I think it was just easier to run things. I was using better guys who would take direction better and not, for lack of a better term, go into business for themselves. And because there was a lot of that in the No Limit. The No Limit Pro Wrestling thing was basically, like you said, a clusterfuck, and it was like the inmates running the asylum.
There's a large mix of backyard wrestlers and
Yes.
semi-trained wrestlers.
Yes.
I remember specifically on a No Limit Pro Wrestling show, you had Terry Taylor and Bob Evans there.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
And
I forgot about Terry Taylor. Oh my
I
God.
worked Bob. I'd never been trained. Bob loved my match, and then Terry Taylor said, "I loved your match," and I was on cloud nine.
You're like 6 to midnight.
Yeah, I'm a backyarder, and he's telling me he likes my match. I was like, I'm gonna get signed in no time.
It's like, fuck you guys, I'm getting signed.
All right, so for some of the people who are unfamiliar with your company, let's go down some of the names that have worked there. My esteemed colleague, Julian Starr.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
Like I said, former Liberty States heavyweight champion.
One half of the Bouncers, Ring of Honor star Brian Malonis.
Yep. Love Brian.
Matt Taven, the Ring of Honor heavyweight champion. as you said.
Probably the best feud in Liberty States history. We've had 2 cage matches. Got a standing ovation for both of them, which is probably one of my favorite moments ever in a wrestling ring. Like just cloud nine, like you said when Terry Taylor wanted to sign you, for lack of a better term. But yeah, Matt Taven, awesome, one of my favorite people to wrestle ever.
Would you say, when you say best, you mean your personal favorite, or you think the best in the history of the company?
Probably the best in the history of the company, I would say, and also my personal favorite.
All right. We have Mikey B.
Mikey B. Yep.
And in the mic, we also have one half of the Viking Warriors, Ivar.
Yep.
Good old Warbeard himself, Todd Hanson. We have current NXT star. You're going to have to help me with this pronunciation. I know him as Donovan Dijak, but what do they call him now?
Dominic Dijakovic.
All right. Retrosexual, Anthony Green.
Yep.
Ring of Honor superstar, Brutal Bob Evans.
Yep.
Brian Fury, owner of the New England Pro Wrestling.
Yep. Another former Liberty
School.
States heavyweight champion.
So it's quite a lot of people. So the first show happens. It's over. You're happy with it? The very first show?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm in for the long haul. I want to keep doing this.
Because I remember we drew fairly well. I know we drew more than anything I ever did in like No Limit Pro Wrestling or Collision Pro Wrestling. I know it was the biggest show I've ever done at the time. It was like 100 people or something like that, and I was very, very happy with it. So I was like, okay, let's keep this rolling.
And comparatively, it probably made more money than No Limit.
Yes, considerably, because I used to lose my ass on several No Limit Pro Wrestling shows, pretty much every one.
Because the common theme that a lot of people put a lot of money in the show and they don't even break even sometimes. And I just wonder, Julian, you've asked this question as well, why people keep doing it? Because, why do you want to do something that's losing money?
Yeah. Yeah, I never understood that. Like, because more often than not, you always paid me what I asked.
Yep.
But there are, I'll tell you, there are rumblings where some people don't. They told me they don't get typically paid what they've asked from you, and you usually ask for a little bit less, and that's fine. Your friend, it is what it is. Do you typically make money running shows, or do you break even, or do you lose money?
So it was kind of like a balance, like figuring out everything. And to me, I have a system down now where it's usually at the very worst break even.
Okay.
And usually it's in the green usually it's positive, but usually at the very worst it's break even.
Okay.
And in terms of people being paid, whatnot and everything, all people have to do is come up to me and say, hey, this is what I usually get. And usually, I'll try to negotiate with them, because usually, if a certain amount's not in my budget, I'll just tell them hey, look, I can't do that, but I can do this, and usually people are very amicable to that.
All right. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just had a question. Typically when you're booking, because you always run the same building.
Yep.
Do you do you book your schedule out like for the season, or do you book it out month to month?
Usually it's pretty much month to month.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of things, come up at the last minute. You don't want to be pigeonholed into things. So.
Gotcha.
So not now per se, but the very first show, are you the owner, booker, the guy?
I'm everything.
You're not like, you don't have your own booker or co-booking or anything like that. You're doing
So when we did No Limit Pro Wrestling, I was basically, like I said, the money mark, and Brian would book all the talent, book all the shows and everything like that. When Brian left, I was the only guy, so I was like, okay, I'll do everything.
I was just going to say, just to kind of play on that, were you the only owner of Liberty States Pro Wrestling, or have you, like, because I'll be honest, Cage Match has some, reference.
Really,
I have not seen Cage Match, so I'm very anxious to see this.
Read here. It says, some of the owners have been Todd Sople, Joey Eastman, Maverick Wild, and Brian Reese were all listed as owner or co-owner at one point of Liberty States
Well,
Wrestling.
Brian Reese is accurate.
Okay.
The other two are not, and I love both of those guys to death, but they never have been an owner with me and everything. Joey, I could probably figure out because I got hooked up with the NWA through him, so that might have been where that came from, but they were never owner or had any stake in the company.
So Maverick Wild never had any kind of money put in or never had any stake put in?
From what I recall, no. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Did I do something with him? Maybe I did. I don't know.
Okay. And Joey Eastman never had anything to do with. Okay. I know he's been around a lot, and I know that he's been with your company a couple times. So I wasn't sure if because he's a smart guy. So I wasn't sure if you guys had some sort of partnering or whatever.
No, I mean the only thing that I ever talked with Joey about was the whole NWA thing and the NWA dues and everything. And then once I basically decided, hey, the NWA thing's really not working out. What am I? I'm not really getting what I'm paying for. So I basically just decided, hey, kind of like drop the NWA thing, just go with Liberty States.
And Bob Evans, never part booker, part owner?
No.
Because anyone who knows Bob knows he's going to stick his claws into whatever company he's working for.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I just naturally assumed he had to have gotten his hand in there somehow over the course of the year.
I'm sure he suggested guys to book, or I know I booked, a lot of his students. I booked Nick Westgate, I booked Congo, I booked a bunch of his guys at the beginning, but he was never a booker. He was never an owner. I'm sure he had some. I know for a fact he had ideas that were contrary to what I booked or wanted, and he would probably even just do them because he thought it would be better. But I mean, better in his mind. But I mean, he was never a booker or an owner. That's for damn sure.
Did you have a falling out with Bob?
Yes, absolutely.
What happened?
So
not even a hesitation.
Yeah.
I was genuinely curious because I don't know the whole story.
Well, I
don't keep in touch with this shit.
I think that your intro is very topical with how how far away from wrestling you are and how transparent you are.
Yes.
So I'm very, very transparent, or I've grown to be very, very transparent because I don't really care that much anymore. Like you said, it's my opinion. It's my opinion of what happened, or it's my opinion of a person. If I think you're terrible and I think you're not trained, or I know that you're not trained, I'm going to tell you that. And if I think you acted like a dickhead, I'm going to tell you that. And I guess that rubs some people the wrong way. But so basically the gist of our whole falling out was, it was a couple things. I remember one car ride we went to Virginia to do. It was me, him, Westgate, and Congo in a car. It was a 13-hour drive, and he took umbrage with me saying something about the length of the drive and everything. I'm sure I said something along the lines, man, this is a friggin' long ass drive or something like that. And at the end, he cuts this ridiculous promo at the end on me, you don't appreciate nothing, blah blah blah, and everything. I did this for you. I'm like, oh, okay, man, cool, whatever. I'm still kind of timid and everything. So I was like, okay, that was kind of weird, but whatever. And then he basically, complained about me not using him or me not having room for him. He's like, oh, I give you, a discount, blah, 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 and everything. I'm like, dude, he's like, you're not appreciative, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I felt like saying, just because you trained me doesn't mean I have to book you on every show. I don't have room for you on this show. If you wait, maybe I'll have room with you on another show. So eventually I just got sick of his he can be very overbearing. Very overbearing. So eventually I went on Facebook and said something along the lines of like, because his little inspirational Facebook thing and everything, he puts on that front and it's not really accurate. So I basically said something along those lines, but I said it a little bit more untactfully.
I gotcha.
And it would cause like a big shitstorm. Like Congo threatened to punch me in the month. That's a direct quote, not mouth, month. Direct quote. I still laugh about that with my friends some of these days. And yeah, it was just a huge like hubbubaloo. And like I was like, okay, cool. So I didn't talk to him for God, I want to say like a couple of years or something like that. And then I went to like a Ring of Honor camp. It's like a year or so ago. It was in December a year and a half ago. And I went there and, it's the first time I saw him in like, 2 years and everything since this whole shit happened. And, we shook his hand, gave him a hug and everything. And, typical Bob, like being over dramatic. I was like, oh man, I thought you were going to punch me in the face or something. I felt like Bob, come on now. Like, I'm going to punch you in the face in front of like all these people in Ring of Honor when I want a job. But so we talked in the hallway, sort of like buried the hatchet and everything. So I was like, okay, cool. That's, off my plate and everything, and then, I took it for what it was. Like, hey, cool, we're on good terms and everything, nothing business-wise was discussed. Nothing booking-wise was discussed. Like, hey, cool, we're on good terms. We're friends again. Maybe I thought in the back of my mind, hey, maybe I'll book him. Maybe I'll have room for him sometime down the line, and everything. And then, hits me up not even 2 days later. Hey, man, you got any spots? Blah, blah, blah. So I feel like, and I was like, so I didn't answer. And then I just said, look, man, that seems very disingenuous what you just did. Like, look, we're on good terms. That's fine. But like when you hit me up for a booking 2 days after we bury the hatchet, it's very disingenuous. So, I mean, hey, I don't feel comfortable using you at the moment. So, and that's basically the last time we spoke. So,
all right. Something I have to ask, which everybody in the audience will think this. Anytime anyone who is a wrestler starts their own company where they're active, are they just a mark that wants to be able to do what they want and doesn't want to do what other people want and wants to book themselves the way they think they want to be? Would you say that you fall in that category at all, or do you think?
So that's the thing that amuses me, because ever since I've gone on unless this whole ever since I've been more transparent on like Facebook, on other social media and everything like that. Everybody's like the big dig. Everybody, he puts himself over for titles. He puts himself over, blah blah blah, and everything like that. First of all, okay, the whole put yourself over for a title thing is the biggest crock of shit that people use. Like, okay. I put myself over for a title like maybe two or three times, whatever. Like, it's always for the greater good to put somebody else over. Everybody asks me, hey, at your Astromania show, why didn't you put yourself over? It's in your hometown. Why didn't you put yourself over Vern? Because I knew Vern was going to be the bigger babyface, and I wanted to put him over. So that's why I, took the title a couple of weeks before at my Peabody show and dropped it right back to him in Derry, because I knew he was going to be a huge babyface. And what do you know? He was celebrating with the crowd, and it was awesome. It was a cool thing. And like, that's the thing. But like, people is like, oh, you put the title on yourself. Oh, okay, cool. Well, you conveniently forgot the fact that I booked myself to lose like 13 shows in a row and made like a whole storyline about it. So like, that's just something people say because they think it's cool. Like, oh, he's an egomaniac, puts himself over, blah, 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 and everything. And like, sometimes you're the only person you can trust. I remember specifically with you was awesome because like you were on every show you were a champion. You defended that title. Every time I needed you, you were right there. It was awesome. Same thing with Brian. Same thing with most of my champions. But I remember one champion that I had to put the title on was Jimmy Preston. And, and I put the title on him. Coincidentally, he beat me for the title. Mm-hmm. And the only time he ever defended it was when he dropped it to you.
I'll be honest, my wrestling career is a fucking
yeah, no, I know. But I specifically remember that because, like, I think it was like 6 months later or something down the line. I run like 6 shows, and I had to have my secondary champion. I think it was Westgate at the time. He was my No Limits champion. Basically move up and be our main event. And he did a great job. I think he worked with like Ivar and like he worked with Vinny or Bob, but like a couple other people. He did a great job, carried the torch and everything, and sort of bridged the gap. But like sometimes you're the only person you can count on.
Okay. So you've never actually had your own virtual opinion about other wrestling companies where, I'll use an example. Isn't Joe Moakley like part of APW and kind of like one of the head guys there?
So yes, he's the owner, so to speak, I guess.
So I'll just real quick. So he's kind of like the quote unquote owner. So like for someone like him, if he puts himself in the top spot or always puts himself in a headline, I'll use Cody Rhodes for AEW. Puts himself over at his own event. You don't have your own opinion looking at other owners and being like, what a fucking mark. This guy's putting himself over or putting himself in the main event or putting him in the spotlight. Like, in my opinion, perception is reality. And so anyone who watches from the outside in, of course they're going to think you're a mark. Because what I'm seeing is I see a guy that owns a wrestling company. You see a guy that doesn't work many other places. He's putting himself over. He's in the main event. I mean, you have to understand where everyone's coming from.
Oh, absolutely. I could definitely see where people are coming from. But the difference is, like, for instance, like with Cody. Like, Cody, awesome worker. Like, Joe Moakley, like, not a good worker, like not like he can't like carry that company. I've made like no secret as to my confidence in myself. I think I can go in there with anybody and have a great match and get over like that as a heel. Babyface, I suck, but as a heel, I'm really, really good at what I do, and I can get over, and I'm a good worker. I can put anybody over, and like there's definitely a line of demarcation. I guess is the word I'm looking for.
I didn't read the dictionary.
Apparently, I didn't either. But yeah, I mean, I think I can definitely see where people are coming from because, again, perception is reality, and it's huge in wrestling. Usually people perceive things, and they're like, they couldn't be more off. But I realize that sort of comes with the territory.
I'm going to be the middleman here. I don't know you that well. I haven't worked on any shows. So on one point, I could see, you got to have a champion that you can rely on. Mm-hmm. So I can see with putting a championship on yourself or one of the guys who runs the company. And then I've worked, I'm not saying you're a company because I've never really worked for you, but I've seen companies where guys who are running the show, they're the top guy, and I know the only reason is because they want to be the top guy.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit on the middle on the subject.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, that was actually one of my questions, and I feel like you tackled every answer. As far as talent on your show itself, as a promoter, do you have a criteria for the people that you book? And the reason why I ask is because you have booked a couple, like myself, a really good worker. But no, you've booked
humble brag.
Yeah, you've booked Brian Fury, you've booked Brian Malonis, Ivar, you name it. But you tend to be one of those guys that we send a lot of students from the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. You book a lot of guys that don't work many other places, like Liberty, other companies like Limit, the popular ones, Bob, Beyond Wrestling, Limitless, all that stuff. It's guys that either were around, have been around, don't really work any other place. And then you have, Tony Spencer. No, sorry, I love Tony. Honestly, I really do. But you know what I mean? Like, do you have a criteria for people? Is it because of money? Is it because they're cheap? Is it because it's people you want to be around? Like, what is your criteria for who you book?
Well, this may seem like a cop-out, but it's like a combination of everything.
Okay.
So for students, like at Brian's school specifically, and I use mostly Brian's students, and that's not by accident because I, trust Brian's training and trust who he has training. I know you were there training the students. I know Johnny V's there. Johnny V's one of my dearest friends in the business. Great guy.
Underrated worker. Everyone should be booking this guy.
Extremely underrated worker.
Go ahead.
But so there's that, and I will always, and plus like Fury students are like always very respectful. They come and help out with the ring, and that's usually 9 times out of 10 the way to get booked. Because I'll see you helping out and everything, and usually either someone will cancel or I'll have a spot, and I'm like, hey, Bryce does factor into it. Well, excuse me, because like you can't book like $700 guys or like you have to have like these level guys, these level guys, these level guys. It has to go in tiers, and that's part of my system and how I do things. And a lot of it's a a lot of it's just guys who get at me at the right time, and I'll watch like a little bit of their clips, like. And Tony was like very. You mentioned Tony like specifically. He's very enthusiastic. Like not so much like not a great worker, but like he's very enthusiastic. He always wants to help. He has a great attitude about things.
I feel like Tony's a great worker. He's not a good wrestler.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a little break, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about the talent of that you've used in the past, as well as some of the history, some of the shows, the plans, the things that have gone on over the course of the past 10 years? You said.
Yep.
All right, we're going to do all that and more when we come back to Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
I'm pro wrestler the Kingpin Brian Malonis.
And I'm referee Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing.
I spent most of my weekends half naked in front of throngs of people at VFW halls and Elks Lodges.
And I've watched. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Every week, listen to us tear down the curtain and tear down each other in the process.
It's the WPAN. Nothing more, nothing less.
New episodes Mondays on your favorite podcast app or on our website, thewpan.com.
Me, I always tell the truth, even when I lie.
All right, and we're back with Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way. We're here with the owner of Liberty Stage Pro Wrestling, Todd Sople. It's been an interesting episode so far. So we got a little, I wouldn't say off track, but we got a lot of things. So we're...
I feel like a lot of the stuff that we attacked early, I actually had for later. But Todd, your mind just goes, and you were just kind of on your own train into the distance.
Yep.
So
I figured that would happen. Yeah.
we just sit back and listen. But
so the show happens, and now you're gonna go forward with Liberty Stage Pro Wrestling. What's like your I guess battle plan, for lack of a better term? What are you thinking? I'm gonna run a show once a month. I'm gonna try running like crazy. I'm gonna try and become the biggest company in New England.
So from what I recall, like I just wanted to run, as many shows as I possibly could. At the time, I never ran the summer, and at first I was like, school's not open during the summer. I don't know if they'll be available, so I just won't ask. And eventually it became where I think the latest show I ever ran was June 1st. And it was like 85 degrees outside and everything. So 85 degrees, there's no air conditioning in the school. So it was about 110 degrees inside. So it was horrible for not only the wrestlers, but the people watching. They still stayed to the end, all the people and everything. It was still like a pretty decent house. But I was like, never again, and... plus there's like so much, plus you just need a break, and that's part of where like the whole season thing came from. So that sort of like evolved out of the whole thing. But at first it was like, hey, I want to run as many shows as I can, and as many shows as are profitable, and as many times as I can not lose money. That would be ideal. And I think to go back to the whole not Liberty States, the whole No Limit thing, when I was losing money, I think that was part of me being, if I was doing that now, if I was running No Limit Pro Wrestling and losing money now, I would stop, because that's not good, because I can't do that, I'm not like $1 million man or anything like that. I have a decent paying job and everything, but losing money is losing money.
Yeah.
But again, as my experience grew and, I knew more of what to do and more of what not to do, that I felt more comfortable running shows and the like. I'm sort of losing my train of thought, but...
Now, when I booked, I didn't own the company,
Yep.
so my focus would be these are the storylines I have for the next year, the next 6 months. Were you thinking that, or were you just thinking I'm going to be running this company and then I'm going to fill in those gaps later on?
It was more the latter, because I wasn't really one to make a whole plan. This is our first show and this is where I want to get to. some seasons it was like that. Some seasons I had a clear, hey, this is what I want to happen at the start. This is what I want to happen at the end. But it was really been play as you go, sort of like figure out things, because you can't really count on somebody, being there at the end, at the beginning. Say you have this whole like big elaborate story of plans and everything, and somebody can't make the last show or can't make the last couple shows, then it's down the drain. You have to read and react and do everything. So I basically didn't really concern myself with that, and sort of like really just made everything up as I went.
And just quickly recap, you run seasons. You don't run yearly, because a lot of times every wrestling promotion, they run yearly. You run seasons strictly for what reason?
A couple reasons. One, to give myself a break. One, because I believe in the summertime the draws do tend to go down because there's a lot of other things going on. People want to go to the beach. They don't really want to be at a wrestling show. I mean, you probably could do fairly well in the summertime, but it's just something that's never interested me, running in the summertime. And like I said before, like the whole, there being no air conditioning, 110 degrees in there. We had to have these huge, ridiculous fans that we bought at Walmart, to even try to cool the people down. And even that didn't work. So it was a combination of factors.
It's not money related at all. You didn't it's not like a situation where you have to save up.
Nope.
Large amounts of money before you start running shows again.
Nope.
It's just weather permitting and just kind of comfort and all that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, so talent-wise, are you did you have hey, these are the guys I want to get? Or were you that's going to fill it in, or whoever comes to me? Because some people have very specific list of, I want wrestler A, I want wrestler B, I want wrestler C. But some people have their students fill the show, or whatever the case.
Was it just take what I can get?
Yeah.
That's basically what it was at the beginning. I know, at the beginning, I was, like I said, I was very much affiliated with Bob, and I was using a lot of what he would recommend and everything. And 9 times out of 10, who he would recommend would be great, and they would do really, really well. And a lot of those people wrestled for me for a long, long time, and years on years on years. And a lot of the other ones were, I don't think I was really affiliated with Brian's school, or really using a lot of people from Brian's school back then. So it was guys that I knew from Front Row Wrestling, from Mav, or guys some lesser tier guys that I knew that were, decent. A lot of it gets around, and a lot of people, would find out, hey, this is the guy running it. They would cold message me, and I would use them.
Is there a reason why you only run PBD? How come you don't travel your shows?
I think it's weird too, because I've wondered that myself. I think a lot of it's comfort, because I know what to expect. I know what needs to be done. I know this is the time we get in. I know this is the time we get out. I know generally what I could expect for a draw, on both ends of the spectrum, low wise and high wise. But I'm not gonna lie, I have thought about branching out to other places. It's just a matter of finding that right place, because I know, I mentioned before, I co-promoted the Astromania thing in Derry at my high school, and that was awesome. And it was awesome to bring pro wrestling back to New Hampshire, and I would love to do it again. I'm sure we'll do another Astromania at some point, probably next year, because the school was overjoyed with it, and the school was really happy with it, and we were happy with it. But it's just, especially in New Hampshire. And look, I would love to run New Hampshire, but it's friggin' difficult to find a place that would. I remember the one place I did contact afterwards, because I was hey, I'm feeling good. I'll contact a place. I think it was the Derry Rec Center, and I know Chaotic used to run there. And they shot me down almost immediately. So I know a lot of places have been burnt out on wrestling. I know a lot of places in New Hampshire make it difficult or cost prohibitive. So that's in New Hampshire. I'm sure there's other places in Mass. I just really haven't looked really as much as I should, or maybe could.
You don't think the New Hampshire licensing thing is ever a factor?
Well, yes, that's extremely a factor, because that,
I assume it puts a burden on you and your wallet, because now it's the whole toss up I've mentioned before, which is, who's going to pay for the licenses?
Yep.
Are you paying for the boys, or are the boys paying for the boys?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, there's so much to deal with in New Hampshire, that make it I don't really want to go down that wormhole, but it's something I've definitely thought of. And, if the right opportunity presents itself, we can definitely work something out,
All right. So now you're a booker, you're a promoter, you own the company. People have got to be coming out of the woodworks.
Oh, God.
Now.
Of course. Of course.
All of a sudden, you're getting texts
You're
and
all,
making
hey, buddy,
best
what's
friends.
going on?
What's going on? I haven't heard from you in a while. What you up to?
So my favorite thing, like, maybe not so much then, but now especially, like, is these people, like, that, like, will come up to me at, like, other shows that I might have worked. I remember this one kid specifically. It was like a lesser trained backyard kid, sort of like he does like the whole like Chop Shop Rhode Island thing, like does like a bunch of shows in that one building and everything. Not really trained that well and everything. I wrestled this show in Beverly, and I had been injured, and I had like a car accident, and my neck was all like jacked up, and I did physical therapy. And my first match back was at this Beverly thing, and I wrestled Christian Casanova, another one of my favorite people to wrestle, another former Liberty Stage champion.
Is he your current heavyweight champion?
He is not. My current champion is Vern Vicalo.
Oh, okay.
So after the match, me and Christian had a pretty decent match. It was okay and everything. And this kid walks up to me, and he had to know that, I run Liberty States. Like, he had to. Because he walks up to me, and he goes, hey, man, that was a great match, blah, 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 and everything. He shook my hand. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks, man, and everything. So fast forward, a couple of years and everything. This is fairly recently. The same kid, like, I commented on something like that on, like, like a Mayor McCheese thing or something like that.
I saw that.
You did see that?
Post.
Yeah. You did?
Oh, yeah. I read the whole goddamn thing.
Yeah, this kid comes and he just starts, like, shitting on me, like, like, because, I had the audacity to say, hey, you're not trained, like, and, like, it's just, like, the two-faced nature of things. So you have to, like... The one thing I've always been very mindful of, or have grown to be mindful of, is the people kissing your ass and the, sort of like, drawing that line in the sand, not being too buddy with people and everything, and knowing when that is authentic. I know I've done a pretty decent job knowing when people are being authentic and when people are not being authentic, because I usually have a pretty good BS meter. And because that's generally working with the public, what I do for my regular job. So, but like, yeah, it can be a little comical sometimes.
Well, I mean, and you ever get into the, I'm not wrestler A versus wrestler B, and you're like, you lay out what you want, and I can speak from experience. They can always do it better than whatever idea you came up with.
Oh God, yeah, that happens
every match.
Usually, like, well, that's what I was speaking about with Bob before. Like, he would always like have like a better idea. Like, I know some people, like, I remember I become a lot better at, like, standing my ground and just telling people no. I remember what was his name? Oh, Sebastian Reese.
Scott Gurin, Max Smashmaster,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it.
He goes by many names. So I remember he had an idea where he would, and it was with, what was his name? Shane Sharp. He was like an old FRW guy, front row wrestling guy and everything. And he was on my show and everything. And he had the idea to take Shane Sharp out of the crowd, like as like a plant and everything, and just beat the bag out of him in the middle of the ring to set something up. So I was like, oh, I don't know. But I was like, okay, whatever, And we did the thing, and like people were like generally like scared, like what the hell is like going on and everything. And it just didn't go over well, and they didn't know what the heck was going on. And like that was like a learning experience for me. It's like, maybe I should, be a little bit more up front and like stand my ground a little bit more. So, but like with Bob, like he would always have an idea like of like, oh, well, this is okay, but what if we do this, blah, blah, blah. And like, usually it was to put himself over or something. And I'm like, oh, like, it just gets to be a little overwhelming sometimes, but I've gotten a lot better at just saying, hey, this is what I want. Take it or leave it.
So you've been to other wrestling shows, right? Ring of Honor and all that stuff, even other indie shows.
Oh yeah.
I've been on one of your shows. The shows are fun to be on. The production rate's a little lacking.
Yes. Oh, I will definitely agree with that.
This is kind of like a two-part question. So my first part of this question is, how come you haven't tried to make your staging or anything a little more presentable? Mm-hmm. And then to promote some of your shows, matches, or anything, how come you don't utilize the internet more and do more promos?
Well, the first question, I have recently addressed that, the production aspect of it, slowly but surely. Not like I have like, crazy cameras or anything like that, but I've significantly upgraded my entranceway, like significantly. I'll show you a picture afterwards. It actually looks pretty sweet. But yeah, from a curtain, like a curtain to like a whole like Liberty States logo type thing and everything, actually looks really, really cool. And it's like I said, a significant upgrade. As far as like promos and everything, yeah, like I remember there was a point where I started doing that, and like again, it was just like it sort of tailed off. Like I couldn't get on these guys because like there's a lot to running a show, like because not only and especially like wrestling on the show too, like not only do I have to wrestle, and if I have an idea, I want to get this promo from this guy. Usually, after my match, I'll be like, pulled in another direction. I was like, hey, I need you here, or hey, what about this for our match? And usually it just slips my mind, and
Gotcha.
I'm like, that's something I definitely would like to do a little bit more, like, and make a point to do when we start back up again in September. But I mean, hopefully I remember this time.
Have you ever thought about stepping back and saying, you know what, wrestling on the shows is just too much with all the other stuff I'm doing. Maybe I should just not be on the shows, do the booking. That's never crossed your mind, not once.
Nope, never. No, because I remember when I was out, and when I was injured, like I had my car accident, and I couldn't wrestle on my own shows for, I think it was like 2 or 3 shows that I ran when I was just strictly watching, strictly booking, everything like that. And it was nice as like a little refreshing thing, but I missed it too much. I missed wrestling too much. I miss being on the show, and our crowd in Peabody's awesome. It's like mostly kids. They get really, really into it. It's like a real throwback. Like they're not like a lot of these shows I've been to, like Lucky Pro Wrestling, I used to wrestle for all the time. Like their whole crowd would be like smart marks. Like I would put somebody, I remember I put somebody in the crossface one time, and everybody was like yelling, Benoit, Benoit, Benoit. I'm like, really?
Really?
Like, yeah.
The one, I think I only wrestled there once.
Yeah.
It was against Atama. It was like an XWA showcase. And they didn't have that experience. Like, they weren't smart markers to me. They were very, like, old school 80s, like, work them the right way. And I don't know. I mean, we all have different experiences. But the one time I ever got to work there, I was like, wow, this crowd's actually pretty awesome. I want to work.
I was on pretty much every Lucky Pro Wrestling show for 3 or 4 years until my whole stuff with Davey Cash happened. And, like, our second, like, little tiff that we had and everything online happened, and I conveniently stopped being booked on the show because Jose Perez called the booker there and everything and complained, but that's neither here nor there. He also called my building and tried to have me shut down, but that's also neither here nor there. But yeah, like I remember it, slowly shifted towards that like sort of smart mark thing when I was there. It was primarily smart marks, but like in Peabody, it's not that. Like they just get into the show, they get really, really into it. Like they're pretty foul mouthed though. They'll always like swear at me or like call me a sissy or anything like that. And it's cool. It's I mean, not so much the swearing, but
something I wanted to ask you about because we all know how the wrestling grapevine works. I've been to a Liberty State show or two. I think
I remember seeing you there.
Yeah, I've never worked one. I heard a lot online and from the boys with the whole Taven feud. I heard a common complaint I heard was that went on forever, and you guys kept main eventing, and that's when you being accused of being like a mark was really coming out from what I heard. I don't have any perspective because I wasn't on the shows. You think that...
Did you guys, everyone listening right now, did you just see that quick, like, I had nothing to do with it? the quick removal of Tarzan Taylor.
I'm sure I made the joke. I won't deny I made the joke at all. But I wasn't on the show. So would you say that was just BS or that maybe you should have pulled it back or just the timing was right? It's what the crowd wanted.
No, I mean, like I said before, Matt's one of my favorite people to wrestle. And look, I've been wrestling Matt in my friggin' living room since I was like 15 years old. We grew up together. We went to the same high school. Actually, coincidentally, the same high school as Ivar or Todd Smith or Handsome Johnny or however name he's going by now. Eric. No, actually, Eric's the other guy. Yeah, that shows how much I watch the product now, which means not at all. But yeah, so I've been wrestling that kid ever since, it was in my living room. I grew up with the kid, and, and when we both got, when he started, I got trained significantly before him, but, when he started, upping his training, and he had his first match with me, I was under a hood, it was awful, but, it was what it was. It was at good times. I specifically remember it. I tried to block it off, but I specifically remember it. But it was always... it was always good. And if it's good, I wanted to keep running with it. And I've grown to not really care what a lot of people think. Maybe back then, if I heard that, I would have cared a little bit more. But now I hear that and I'm saying, really get over yourselves. Not too much, too much, or, calling me a mark for booking myself with Taven too much. Whatever, cool. Whatever. If you think that, and if you think I'm a mark, cool. I've grown tired of pleasing everybody in wrestling a long, long time ago. And I think that, again, speaks to the theme of the show. As far removed as I am now, only really working for myself, which is nice, the less filter I have.
To defend myself and clear up,
Quick defense.
I'm not saying I wasn't ever saying that. I'm just saying right now I'm not accusing you of being a mark. I'm asking you the question if that's what's going on. So you get a lot of flack or a lot of pushback, or is you shouldn't do this, or why aren't you booking me, or I should be in this angle, I should be in the main event, any of that kind of stuff?
Not so much here or there, but not really. Every now.
Being on the show is a lot more different than being just a booker who's not on the show.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. There will always be people that anytime I win a match in Liberty States or anything, I'm oh, he's putting himself over, blah blah blah. I've learned to basically screw them, whatever. I'm gonna do what the hell I want to do. If I want to book myself to go over, that's fine. If that's what it calls for. If it calls for me to lose 13 matches in a row, I'll do that. Whatever. The one thing that always made me laugh was Steve Weiner. He would always come up to me, and I know he was serious about this too. And I love Steve to death. One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. He would always come up to me and go, hey, this is my Steve Weiner impression. Hey, Todd Sople, I got a good idea. I'm like, oh, okay, what, Steve? How about you put one of your titles on me? Maybe the heavyweight title. I'm like, I don't know, Steve. Maybe check back with me and everything. And he would always come up to me and do that and everything. And, Johnny Vegas will do it sometimes too, but he'll do it jokingly. But usually people are just, they usually just go with the flow and do what they told, especially lately,
So when it comes to being a booker and the owner of the company, right? Do you know how to separate your personal feelings with someone if it comes to them being a good talent? So let's just say, I'm just going to use them as an example.
Yep.
You guys don't have heat. I'm not trying to create bullshit. Let's just say you and Brian Fury have heat.
Yep.
Brian Fury is a good talent.
Yep.
Okay. Would you be able to separate your personal differences or your personal opinion of him if you at the time thought he was a shitty person to book him knowing that he's going to create value for your show?
Mm-hmm. Well, that would depend. It would depend on the level of heat. If we just had a disagreement online or something like that, or he called me, a dink or something like that, whatever, that's fine. But for instance, the one time I haven't been able to separate that is, with someone someone I used to use all the time, Congo, who threatened, like I said before, to punch me in the month, and it got to a point where he was calling me and threatening me on the phone. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't want to deal with this. And he was threatening to come to a show, an APW show. It was Yankee Homecoming one year. He was coming, threatening to beat the crap out of me. And my friend at the time, Woody, God rest his soul, Big Woody, had to intervene and say, hey, look, he had to talk to Bob on the phone for 2 hours. Funny story about that. My favorite Big Woody story of all time. So I was wrestling Danny Miles in the main event that night, or booked to wrestle Danny Miles in the main event that day. And, there was a battle royal to start the show. And I'm like, hey, Woody, do I have to be in the battle royal? Because I fucking hate battle royals. Fucking despise them.
They're hit or miss.
And he goes, in his typical Big Woody way, he's like, you're goddamn right you do. You made me talk to Bob Evans on the phone for 2 fucking hours last night, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I go out there. As soon as the bell rings, I eliminate myself. So I walk to the back and everything with a shit-eating grin on my face, and he just has like the biggest friggin' smile on his face, and that's like my favorite, like one of my favorite memories in wrestling ever. But like he would always stick up for me. He would always have my back, and that was one of those times like where it just got so out of hand. Like, look, it should never get that out of hand. We're a bunch of guys playing make pretend in spandex with baby oil and however means it's like all fake, for lack of a better term. Like, we should all be getting along for the greater good. But like, again, it comes in with those egos and everything, like, and it just, yeah. But so if I ever had like a disagreement with Brian, like, you
just
know,
anyone in general.
Anyone in general, like, yeah, you know, it would depend on the length of the disagreement. But if somebody just like said something disparagingly about me one time, I would, you know, if they had value for my company, I would certainly consider using them.
Why don't you just put them in their place, punch them in the mouth?
Punch them in the month.
Yeah, like, I'm serious. Like, what? I mean, someone challenges you to a fight, put them in their place, and then send them home. You know?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. You know?
So while we're on the subject of all these of the social media and all this back and forth, I got to read this quote because it really threw me for a loop, and I had to get your opinion.
I'm interested in that.
Todd Sople wouldn't book me because that means he would have to step aside as the top guy, because unlike him, my heat and ability on the mic have brought houses up and put asses in seats. It's not my opinion, it's fact. People want to witness the train wreck.
Oh, okay.
I just want to state, because I am the guy that will drop any name, that is a direct quote.
Okay, so can I guess who it was from?
Yes, you absolutely may.
So I know who it was from because I specifically remember this and laughing my ass off about it. Buddy Romano. Yeah. So
what is up with that?
So, oh my God. Okay. So where do I start with him? Okay. So Buddy, I've known ever since I started, you know, training at Bob's and everything like that. And I always got along with Buddy, you know, for the longest time. You know, there were times where, like, and it's no secret, Buddy has some issues and some demons and everything. And he's said as much. He's messaged me. He's called me on the phone when he got out of rehab, and he's talked to me on the phone for like 2 hours. And I've always tried to be there for him and everything. You know, like, look, I understand, you know, everybody goes through a tough time and everything. But, like, it gets to a point where it's just, like, ridiculous. Like, he would post, like, these pictures of, like, his wrestling bag. Like, and he would post a picture of a wrestling bag, his wrestling bag, with a machete in it. like a legit machete. And be like, oh, maybe I might have to take some people out, you know, at this town or something, paraphrasing. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, and you wonder why you won't get booked? Like, and, like, so he... And he would, like, message these, like, random people, like, you know, wanting to get sympathy and everything. And eventually you get wise to that. He would message me, like, I'd be like, okay, cool, man, whatever. He would message Mav, like, he would message Amato, who's a really, really good friend of mine. And I remember him specifically, like, Amato coming to me. He's like, hey, man, have you heard anything from Buddy Romano? It was like his brother messaged me saying, you know, he committed suicide or something like that. I'm like, what? Like, what the? And come to find out, it was Buddy drunk, you know, trying to get sympathy. So, like, he posted something. I'm like, dude, like, and I commented on it, and I'm like, look, man, Mav posted something, like, because Buddy talked to him or something. And said something on the lines of, you know, somebody better check on Buddy. You know, I'm like, look, dude, he's just, you know, trying to get sympathy for himself and everything. And Buddy did not like that. He messaged me out. He's like, you don't know what it's like, blah, blah, blah. Curse me. It's like, I thought you had my back. I'm like, dude, like, I don't want to have this conversation, man. Do what you do, whatever. And then on that conversation that I mentioned before with that like backyard kid, like that we had that Julian bread and everything, Buddy decides to intervene because it's the cool thing to do to shit on Todd Sople now these days, and just decides to talk about like how he, you know, gets all this heat everywhere at, you know, these like limp dick places that he works, you know, blah, and like he like is the most delusional person I've ever met in pro wrestling. Like he'll work like these like little Elks lodges for like Showcase Pro Wrestling and think it's like Madison Square Garden and thinks he get all these heats and everything, like gets all this heat and everything. He comes out to the Bullet Club's music, like, and like what the like. Oh, I'm like, oh my God, like, so that's where the whole thing came from, and like that quote was friggin' money. So great.
Is it stem from you not booking him, or is it just an argument that turned into this?
It was just like it just came out of nowhere. Like it was literally just after like he took umbrage with something that I said, like, and he just decided to jump on me and everything like that. And like, full disclosure, I was not going to book him ever again, like, because I'm not going to see a machete in a bag, and plus he's friggin' nuts, like completely crazy. So I'm not going to book somebody on my friggin' show. And he still has this thing from like when I was booking him before, like this ladder match that I had him in. And the one instruction I gave to all these guys in the ladder match was stay away from the people in the front row. Do not hurt them. You can do all the stuff in the ring and everything, because I know ladder matches can be kind of a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Just please do not hurt anybody else. And what does he do? He dives in the front row and almost takes somebody out. Like what the hell? And then I yelled at him after. I was like, dude, like, what the hell were you doing? And he like took so much. He still mentions that to this day. Like, and I'm like, oh, and it was like 5 years ago. Oh, he's interesting.
So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get us back on topic here. I had gone on the official Facebook for Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way, and I had asked a couple people, if you had to ask a wrestling promoter, booker, owner, anything, what would it be? One of the questions we had was from Lori Jean. She wanted to ask that fan interaction. You know, how much do you think it's good for matches? Do you think it's bad? Like, and what they mean by that, I think I know what she's trying to get with. You know how nowadays it's the whole got to bring the crowd in to the point of a yes chant, a low raise, there's always something where the crowd is basically a part of the match. Do you think that hinders the match? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's important?
I think a little of that is okay, but it's a fine line where it can get to be the point where it's pandering. Like, and you sort of want to tell the story with, it's okay to get the crowd involved every now and then, but like, you want to tell the story as much as possible with you and the other guy. Like, and if you can get those people invested in it, without having to like, pander to them, that's the true art of pro wrestling, in my opinion, at least. And like, look, like there's always like, little fan interactions here and there, like the whole, like the gimmicky, like, the baby face will hook the heel and you'll bring him around the ring. The people will like, the little kids will chop him and everything like that. That's kind of cool depending on the show you're at and everything. It's like a, sort of like old school, like it's a little hokey, but it is what it is. People get into it. But like, it's definitely a fine line.
Okay. And then another fan of the show, Al Spader, asked, would you rather have a full house as a promoter? Would you rather have a full house of people who don't react or a small house of people who do react?
Full house.
You'd rather have a full house of people?
I saw that question too. And my reasoning for that is like, sometimes I've been at shows where like, sometimes no matter what you do, you just can't get them to react. They just want to sit on their hands or for whatever reason. And like, look, that's fine. You're paying the money for the ticket and everything. But sometimes they just don't react. So I would if you give me those two options, full house or not a good house, full house every time. So
Tarzan, what's your opinion on the whole crowd not reacting? And
I'm a firm believer is whatever it is, you're not giving them what they want to see.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I don't know what that is all the time. But yeah, I'm a firm believer if the crowd's not reacting, there's something wrong in the show. You're not giving them whatever it is they're looking for to see.
And I think
that gets used. No, I'm saying this here, but it gets used as a cop out by a lot of people. I feel that the crowd was weird. I think that's kind of a cop out for most people when they say that stuff, because how good is your match if the crowd isn't reacting?
I 100% agree with that. And I'll equate this to a match I had at Maine, and Brian and I, crowd filled house. Brian and I lock up. We go to do catch can wrestling. We're trying to, and crowd sits on their hands.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Brian goes, "Let's try something," and we did a spot, and I pushed him, and he fell, took a bump, and did the whole, Ric Flair on his knees, like, no, don't punch me or whatever. And I pulled a fist back, and I looked at the crowd, and the crowd went ape shit.
Yeah.
And that kind of clicked in my head as I was like, oh, this crowd's not here to watch wrestling. You're
Yeah.
here to watch theatrics.
Yes, exactly.
And so to play off what Tarzan said, I agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. There are fans that are going to sit on their hands, but I think one, it equates to the workers. If the workers aren't watching the show and they just watched, Kamala and Doink the Clown go at it, and they're like, okay, they're not falling for characters. Someone go out there and wrestle.
Yeah.
They're not falling for wrestling. Figure out what it is they want. Do they want a guy to talk to them? Do they want do they want clowns? Do they want wrestling? Figure it out. Crowds aren't going to sit on their hands beginning to end. It's just workers don't watch matches anymore because they're so focused on themselves. And so if you're a good worker, figure out what they want, give it to them. I share that same opinion with him as well.
And I share a little bit of that too as well. Like, I think you should definitely, like, to your point about you and Brian, you should definitely switch gears when it's needed to be switched gears, and you should definitely try something new. Like, a lot of people are hesitant to do that. And a lot of people, they'll think they'll piss somebody off, or they think they'll piss a booker off and everything. Hey, look, if something's not working, if you're on one of my shows, I can't speak for anybody else, but if you're on one of my shows, if something's not working or the crowd's not getting into it, and you find something that does, I don't care how you get there. If they're up on their feet, and if the baby face is looking strong, and if the heel it gets over, if both people get over equally, then cool. Like, I don't care how you get there. Within reason. Don't, like, bust yourself open hard way, or whatever, everything like that.
Your favorite question that gets asked to bookers. How much do you love this answer? Hey, how was the show tonight? It was great. Weird crowd.
I fucking hate it. Fucking hate it. I feel it's a cop out.
It's 100% a cop out.
Yes, weird crowd. I've never once uttered weird crowd in my lifetime. So yeah.
We've talked a lot about booking and wrestling and dealing with talent, so we're gonna sidestep a little bit for a little bit. Let's talk about just the
Gonna sidestep a little bit for a little bit.
sidestep a little bit for a little bit.
Is it like setting up automatic payments for automatic?
Because some of our audience is interested in this type of stuff. Go into some of the details, the difficulties of running a wrestling show that have nothing to do with the talent
In the ring,
and
yeah.
the ring. Yeah, share with our audience some of the difficulties that come with running a wrestling company that don't have to do with actually what's going on in the ring.
Well, luckily, I'm extremely lucky. I already have had a building for 10 years, going on 10 years or whatever the heck it's been, and so I don't have to worry about getting to the building. Usually any date that I want, I can have, which is within reason. Sometimes there'll be like a basketball game there, and have to go in a little bit later. But usually any date that I want, I can have. There's everything, like from the insurance, postering, which I do everything myself, because I oddly enough like it. I've grown to like it. I've grown to like papering the town and doing the stuff on Facebook. I don't have like a street team or anything. Maybe that's just me being stubborn. Maybe I should have a street team, or maybe I shouldn't do it all myself. But that's just how I've done it for the longest time, and there's that. There's making sure the truck is rented for the ring. There is transporting the ring. There is setting up the ring, which usually I don't have to touch anymore because there's mostly a bunch of students there, which is very, very helpful. There's making sure everything's set up. There's making sure all the cards are written down, making sure everybody knows what's going on. Prepping my ring announcer for everything he needs to know. Like there's quite a bit like involved, but I've generally, like I said, it all comes down to systems and like getting used to doing things. And I generally have a pretty good system going now where it's not like too stressful. There's always a decent amount of stress involved in it and there's always a stress on every show because gotta be people that's showing up, or am I gonna break even, or what, everything, Is there going to be, do I have to run a show on a holiday weekend? Usually I try to stay away from that, is it going to snow? Like, because that's another thing too. Like I've had to cancel, like I don't really run in January anymore because every time I try to run in January, I have to cancel because it's a giant friggin' snowstorm for whatever reason. But there's so many variables you need to deal with and that can just like stress you the heck out and everything. But I've gotten so much better at dealing with that. Like I don't want to say like I don't worry about it at all anymore, but it's like, it's a lot easier for me to deal with it now.
What advice would you give to someone who's starting out running their own show?
Make sure all your ducks are in a row. Like I can't say it enough. Make sure like you cannot be over prepared. You make sure, everybody's coming, make sure everybody's all set, make sure the door lady's taken care of, make sure she has change, make sure the building is all set, make sure everybody knows what not to do and what to do. Like, you can never be over-prepared. Like, just make sure everything's all set so you don't have to worry about anything show day.
And another question that a fan had asked, which I actually had written down too, his name is Jordan Paul. He wants to know, between everything that you deal with running a show, everything you've been with through the past up to now, everything under the sun, is this all worth it for you? Is it worth it? Was it worth it? Whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, I grew up a wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan since I was 5 years old. And if you would have told me then that I would be, I'm 35 now? Yeah, 35. That I've been running professional wrestling shows for going on 10 years now, or over 10 years now, kind of the No Limit Pro Wrestling stuff. And, I've, been at Ring of Honor. I've done shows for Ring of Honor. I've done shows for Chikara. I've wrestled all over New England. I've had the opportunity to wrestle some awesome people. I've wrestled Rhino before. I've wrestled Stevie Richards, Nikolai Volkov, the FBI. I've had the opportunity to wrestle some awesome people. And again, these local people too, like Matt Taven, Brian Fury, Anthony Green, too many people in a name. If you would have told me all of that, I would have said, hell yeah, that's worth it. That's more than I could have ever hoped for, because at 5 years old, hey, was my dream the WWE? Hell yeah. I think that was any 5-year-old's dream who was a pro wrestling fan. But, those dreams can be adjusted. And I'm having more fun now just doing my shows than having to worry about, trekking to, God knows where in Massachusetts to wrestle somebody I don't really know or are familiar with, or don't know where his training's from, or don't even know if he's safe, and, doing it for, $20 or $30. Sometimes that's not worth it, and more these days, I'm finding that the line is blurred where the backyard or less experienced people are slowly moving their way up to these bigger shows or more experienced shows. And it's in my opinion not good, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's one of the reasons why I left APW, or was, I should say, I can't believe I'm about to say this, future endeavored from APW. Because that's legitimately what happened, because I told Joe, I was like, why are you using backyarders? This is ridiculous. And look, maybe they've gotten better at it, but they still do use some backyarders. And I've been with that company, or I had been with that company from the beginning. And look, I don't care how much they're doing for you. There's still a point where you need to be trustworthy, and I don't want to be in the ring with somebody that I don't trust. And apparently he didn't really like anybody questioning him, so he future endeavored me. But and that's another thing too. It's just now I'm a lot happier just doing my band thing and doing the wrestling thing on the side, running my own shows and everything. Hey, look, if opportunities come along, I'm not saying I'm not open for, hey, if you want to book me, hey, whatever. I think you won't regret it, but that's neither here nor there. I realize my reputation precedes me a little bit, which is fine. I'm totally cool with that. But if you look through that, you realize I'm a pro's pro. I know what I'm doing, and I'm an asset to any show, to put myself over. Humble brag, pat on the back, Barry Horowitz. But yeah, I mean, it's all worth it. It's always been worth it. And regardless of all the bullshit that you go through as a promoter, as a wrestler, it's always been worth it. And I will never regret anything. So,
well, I got two questions on what you said there. One, you do have kind of a bad reputation, specifically on social media.
That's fine. Hey, I realize that. Yeah.
You think that's earned, or you think that's overblown?
I think that's overblown, but I mean, I'm biased in this situation. But I think a lot of it is, I've learned to be very upfront and very, I'm very transparent. That's the word I always use, but I'm very transparent. I will tell you exactly how I feel about a situation. Sometimes sometimes a lot of people don't like that, and they say that, oh, this guy, he's hard to deal with, blah, 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 because, he said this, blah, blah, blah. Or wrestling is so weird. Like, there's so many, like, little, like, if you say something bad about someone's friend, you're automatically the worst person in the friggin' world. Like, it's like high school. And everybody piles on, like you saw on the friggin' that post you were talking about. Like, it's just... And that's the part I'm completely over. Like, that's the part I hate about it. Like, and if I never have to deal with that again, cool. I'll probably have to deal with it again because that's just the nature of the beast. But look, I've learned if people want to have their assumptions, or if people want to have like a reputation, or have my reputation precede me, that's cool. If they want to think that way, that's cool. I've been beyond trying to please people in the wrestling business for a long, long time. Like, if you know me and get to know me, like, you can make your own decision. But if you want to observe from afar, that's cool too. Like, I've learned to not so much care about that anymore at all. So,
my other question: for whatever reason, at some point, you might not be able to compete in the ring.
Yep.
Would that be the end of Liberty States Wrestling?
Depends. Like, I really can't give that answer now. Like, if I'm still having fun doing it, like, if I'm still having fun running the shows, and there's no reason to stop just because I can't wrestle anymore, or so I won't. I don't think I would stop, but.
I was honestly ready to wrap this up with the Fantastic Four, but your question sparked a question in my head. Do you ever fear that what we had just talked about, the negative reputation that you've now gained for yourself on social media, do you ever fear that that's going to cause an issue with running Liberty States and trying to get people to work for you?
No, not really, because like most people that I use just generally know that, like, my shows are good, like, and I'm a pretty stand-up guy. So like there are people that have never met me or have some sort of opinion about me, and they may not work maybe because of it. That's cool. Like, there's always plenty of people that will want to work and want to actually, be on the shows. And like, if people want to think one way because of something they might have heard, that's cool too. Like, and people have their own opinion and they're entitled to it. Nobody's a dick for having an opinion. Nobody's a dick for thinking I'm a dick. But it is what it is.
It's one thing I've always said when I was a booker. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Are you?
Really? I did not know you were a booker.
You don't have to wrestle here if you don't like it.
Exactly.
I think that phrase really needs to be said more often.
Exactly.
Because my own experience talking to people around shows, people act like you put a gun to their head and force them to come work on the show. And it's like, if you're not happy here, if I'm not, for whatever reason, pay or the booking, or you think I'm a mark or whatever, you don't have to wrestle here.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So that does come up a lot. That part I just think is something all you workers out there really need to think about.
Well, Todd, I think you've been a hell of a guest.
Well, thank you.
You've probably been one of the best. So we like to end the show. We're going to wrap things up here. What's that?
We definitely got the honesty we looked for.
Yes, we did. And that's what I'm loving about this interview. So we like to wrap the show up here with a little thing we call the Fantastic Four.
Okay.
And so what the Fantastic Four is, it's the same 4 questions that we ask every one of our guests.
Okay.
Obviously, we're asking for truth and honesty.
I don't think you'll have a problem there.
So the first question we always ask is, this is strictly with your dealings as the booker, promoter, owner of Liberty States Pro Wrestling, NLP.
Yeah.
What is the thing that you are most proud of as far as being an owner and whatnot?
Well, like... it's kind of the longevity of it. Like 10 years in one place, running 6-7 times a year. Like, that's a hell of a run. Like, that's awesome. Like, and I wouldn't be able to do it had we not had like awesome wrestlers to keep them coming back, and people willing to help out. Because I can't do this shit on myself. My mom is my best friend and my door lady. According to some people on the Burning Hammer, she's also the financer of Liberty States Wrestling, which, by the way, I want to put that rumor to rest right now. That's bullshit. But
are you the only person that finances?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know how that rumor started, but whatever. I still hear it to this day.
It's a weird rumor.
It is. Like, I don't even know how it started, but whatever.
I think that's the same. It's a similar rumor to like not just you in general, but like any nerd, like the moment you find out, like if they're a nerd in your eyes, they always live in their mom's basement.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
maybe they have that perception of you
Yeah.
that you are a nerd that lives in mom's basement. and that
Whatever.
mom-
They could have that perception. That's cool. But she is my door lady because she's the only person I can trust with my money, because I've trusted other people before and that has not worked out. But yeah, that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, just the longevity and just being able to have people to help me out and just putting on an awesome product. Like, because I'm very proud of our product and I'm very proud of all the talent that's come through the Liberty States locker room.
All right, question 2. When comes to running Liberty States, what would you say is your biggest regret?
Biggest regret? Oh, geez, that's a good one. It kind of piggybacks off. Well, actually, no. Well, it's a couple things. It kind of piggybacks off what I said before about, not being more assertive in my early days and everything, and, sort of letting people walk all over me a little bit as a booker. And there's a couple times where I've co-promoted shows with people. Recently, like I mentioned before, recently very successful with Brian. That was an awesome experience. I will do it again in a heartbeat because Brian's one of my dear friends in the business, and it was incredibly smooth from beginning to end. But there have been times where I've co-promoted with other people and it has not been smooth and has not gone well. So,
All right. Well, this is a question that I genuinely enjoy asking. So, Sople, the floor is going to be yours. The spotlight is on you, sir.
Oh, dear.
Go ahead and vent your heart out. Of your entire dealings with Liberty States, being a booker, probably wrestling in general, really. Who would you say you hate the most, and will you name them?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Wow, what a question. Oh, dear.
We also settle for strongly dislike.
No, hate's a good word. Oh, dear. Okay, let me think. Wow, this is such a loaded question. Okay, I will definitely name him.
God, that's why I love to hear.
This is a little bit more recent. It's very topical because as much as I mentioned, like, guys like Bob or everything, I will never forget what Bob did for me and helping me out and everything. As much as kind of like grief I give him and shit I give him and everything like that. Look, I love the guy. He is who he is and everything, and I will always have that special place in my heart for him, even if we aren't that close to get all mushy. But the person I hate the most in wrestling is actually a topical thing right now because he's trying to move into my territory. Is named by a guy by the name of Todd Graham, who goes by the name of Derek Simonetti. He runs the Proving Ground Pro Wrestling, or as I like to call it, Pretend Beyond Wrestling, because he wants to be beyond wrestling so bad. He runs about 10 minutes down the street from me in my building. He has tried to poster at my shows before. Or has asked permission to poster at my shows, and I've shot him down. He uses a bunch of backyard people, and he tries to be very passive-aggressive and say, oh, well, we could both succeed, blah, 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 and everything like that. Tries to use the same exact people that I use. And, like there's just something about him, like, regardless of the fact that he comes from a backyard, sort of background and everything, just something about him that I just friggin' despise. Just his know-it-all nature and everything. But that's neither here nor there. Plus, he made a huge stink about this show I was on with him, where he was a half booker or something like that. Where I was talking to a friend, Johnny Vegas, and I gave my opinion about a worker he was working on the show, and he got all hot and bothered about it because it wasn't what he wanted to hear. Blah blah blah, and I had to deal with it. I said I said something along the lines of your dog sucks or your whole family's it was the worst thing ever. Apparently that what I said, but yeah. So that's the person I pretty much hate the most.
So just to kind of ask you a question about that one, there's no shot at the guy. I just don't know who he is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Todd Graham. Do you not feel that that's a pretty petty reason to hate someone? I mean, really, he didn't really say anything negative about, or at least you didn't tell us. He didn't say anything personal about you. Yeah, he tried to poster at your shows and stuff, and yeah, his shows may not be up to your opinion as to being a good show or a good ethical run business. I mean, it's a petty thing. You don't believe that's a petty reason?
It might be a little petty, absolutely. But I mean, it's how I feel, man. It absolutely is.
It's your opinion. I just wanted to kind of ask because I know, if I hated someone, they would have to do something really bad to me. But that's It's just one of those things that it literally popped into my head. I was like, really? That's who you hate, and that's the reason why?
Well, there's Congo too, because he threatened to punch me in the month, and he
Gonna have to read whatever this came from.
Was this on the internet?
Yeah,
it was on a while.
Facebook,
It was
or?
like 2 or 3 years ago. It was on Facebook.
Todd, did you block him?
No, did I block him? Maybe I did. I don't know. But yeah, it was like he posted on some like obscure thread, like, it's like, I'm gonna punch you in the month, Sople, blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, those are the 2 people that I would probably say I strongly dislike or hate the most.
No offense to you, but we're gonna have to get Congo on, then get his side of the story.
That's fine. Absolutely. I'm sure he will give you all the salacious details.
Because I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot, and I've rarely seen incidences escalate to an actual physical confrontation.
I couldn't believe it, man. I could not believe. I still don't believe it to this day, because he was one of my he was a good friend of mine, and it was just like over some stupid thing. But hey, whatever.
All right. Question 4: what does the future hold for Todd Sople and Liberty States Wrestling?
Basically, I'm just gonna keep on running, keep on doing what I'm doing. Like, there's no need to change, anything. Like, hey. Like I said, I'm extremely busy with I'm in 2 rock bands, 2 cover bands, and like I'm extremely busy with those. But there are times where if I want to wrestle for someplace else, and if somebody else wants to contact me to wrestle, that's cool. And if not, that's cool too. Like, I'm really kind of just taking things as they come right now, because I'm having a good time and I'm enjoying myself, and I'm enjoying running my own shows, and I'm enjoying doing that. So that's basically what the future holds. So,
all right. Well, we want to thank you.
Well, thank you.
Being a guest on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
This is fun.
This is our plug time. Do you want to plug any of your own social media?
Okay, so there's at Liberty States on Twitter. There's Liberty States Wrestling on Facebook. Just type Liberty States Wrestling and give us a like. You can find me personally on Facebook at Todd Sople. You can find me personally on Twitter at Todd Sople. On Instagram and Snapchat and everything, it's all the same, Todd Sople. No need for funny nicknames or anything. And that's everything I can think of to plug.
It's not really wrestling, but since Julie and I are such nice, positive guys, you want to plug either the cover bands you
mentioned? Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. Oh, wow, you are very positive.
We are the furthest from positive people you'll ever be.
Well, in that case, your reputation precedes you. But, so I'm in 2 cover bands, the Tape Deck Heroes with a Z. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Tape Deck Heroes with a Z. I'm also in another cover band, Boss and the Sauce. Boss, BOSS, and the Sauce.
That's actually a pretty badass name.
It is. It is a bad. Well, it's a double-edged sword, because like my lead singer's last name is Boss, and that's where it came from and everything. But lately, we've had people coming up to us and saying, "Oh, you guys are a Bruce Springsteen cover band, huh?" I'm like, "No, we are absolutely not a Bruce Springsteen cover band, but that's neither here nor there." So, but yeah, it's a fun name, But yeah, those are both on Facebook. Check us out, give us a like, and yeah.
Perfect. I want to thank you. I don't know with all the social media if we're going to get some negative responses to this or not.
I'm sure you probably will from here or there. I'm a pretty polarizing figure.
You've been involved in a lot of shitstorms on Facebook.
Yes.
I was going to say, buckle in, Todd, because once this releases and your word gets out, damn well people are going to blow up your Facebook with their own opinions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the nature of the beast.
I'm sure you're
going that I'm not used to.
You're going to be ready to smash some keys, because I know you like to respond.
Well, that's the thing. People like to call me the keyboard commando, so maybe I should trademark that.
Please, can you post a picture of like a commander's hat on with you in front of a computer?
Well, it's funny. The other one was Keyboardosaurus, and this kid that I know, he used to come to all the APW shows and everything, actually like photoshopped a thing where it was like a Tyrannosaurus Rex with a keyboard and my face on it. I'll have to show you the picture one time. It's friggin' hilarious.
If we can, with the whole, you said you wanted to show me a picture of your entrance, and you also want to show me that picture. If we post it on the New England Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way Facebook, that'd be okay?
Absolutely.
All right,
yeah.
Perfect.
All right, Julian, while we're on the subject, you want to plug our social media?
Yeah, I'll try to do that without screwing up. So we have a new website. It's Truth, Justice, and New England Pro Wrestling Way. It's tjnepww.podbean.com. That's where you can find Truth, Justice, and New England Pro Wrestling Way. You can find the episodes that we will air bi-weekly on Wednesdays. You can download from there. You can also download on iTunes, Spotify, Radio FM, every major podcast streaming site you can think of, we are on all of them, ladies and gentlemen. And you can, whatever fits your fancy, go ahead and download. You can find us on Truth, Justice, and New England Pro Wrestling Way. It is a Facebook page. Please go ahead and stop by, give us a like. We'll go ahead and ask you some questions. We'll ask you opinions. If you have any opinions or questions on your own, if you have any suggestions, go ahead and reach out to us anytime, and we can go ahead and take that suggestion and shove it up your ass. No, sorry. We'll take it into account and try to adjust accordingly. We really want to entertain people. On Twitter, we are at Pro Wrestling Way. We want to thank Mike Crockett for giving me that idea. That is a very catchy little handle. So we are at Pro Wrestling Way on Twitter. Go ahead and stop by, give us a follow. We'll be updating on every major site. We're going to stay away from Instagram because it's just too taxing. So Facebook, Twitter, Podbean, iTunes, you name it, we're there.
All right, we genuinely want to thank you for tuning in. The show has become an absolute pleasure for me to do. Took us a long time, a lot of work, but we're really happy to be doing it.
Yeah, this is super exciting. Every time we get a chance to record, Tarzan and I get super giddy just because of, one, we genuinely enjoy these conversations. I genuinely enjoy editing them. And again, we do not edit content. We just edit for space. But I just enjoy the putting the show together and whatnot. It's just an all-around project. It's extremely fun, and we're glad that you are all here to support us.
As always, if you have questions, comments, you want a certain guest on, certain topic, you'd like to see a guest return. We were too nice to Todd. We weren't nice enough. You had questions that we should have asked that we didn't ask. Whatever the case may be, we want to hear from you. We do this show for our listeners, and we want to do whatever it takes to make you all happy.
And if you're feeling scared to tell the truth and serve justice, you can go ahead and message us. You can message me at Julian Star on Facebook, or even Julian _Star 89 at Twitter, or Star 32989 on Instagram. If you're feeling too nervous to be a public figure, go ahead and message me privately. I will not address you if you ask, and we can go ahead and get your point across one way or another.
Man, as always, thank you for joining us. This is we're going to wrap things up here on our show. Join us again in 2 weeks for another episode of Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.